que dan pistas también sobre quiénes somos. Turquesa es su color, pero también es el nombre de la política internacional que busca posicionar a Chile en el campo diplomático internacional como un actor relevante en la mitigación del cambio climático, la protección del océano y los ecosistemas marinos. Queremos invitarlos a la reflexión sobre nuestros océanos, cómo abordar su exploración, cómo generar conocimiento, cómo gestionar los recursos que nos dispone y también cómo manejar las políticas en torno a él. Al final, sin océano, y ustedes lo saben, no hay vida. ¿Cómo nos aseguramos de protegerlo? Para ello vamos a comenzar con una exposición de una gigante, podríamos decir, de una titán. Estamos hablando de Sylvia Earle. Ella es bióloga marina, exploradora. Mire. Sin nada más que decir, me retiro. Silvia.
Well, to all of you assembled here and all of those of you who may be listening from somewhere else, gracias for the privilege of being here to speak about past, present, and especially the future, and to say congratulations. No matter how old or young you are, but especially to the youngest here. You are so lucky, all of us are, to be here as 21st century human beings. You may say, what are you saying? What are you thinking? We have climate change, we have disease, we just have come through and are still in a pandemic. There are wars. We're worried about the economy, lots of things you can worry about, but imagine if we did not know that we have problems. That would be a problem. What we have that no one else in all of previous history has is unprecedented knowledge, awareness of what Earth looks like from high above, knowledge about what people are doing on the other side of the world, knowledge that the climate is changing. We have the evidence. Imagine if we did not know. You can know and not care, but you can't care if you don't know. And if you don't care, you're not going to do anything about the problems that are here. I look at the kids of today, and I am so impressed with not just the knowledge that they have, because they live in the 21st century and the knowledge is all around. It's become what people think of as common knowledge, knowing what Earth looks like from high above, knowing that you can tune in and find out what the weather is going to be, not just kind of like climate change, like over seasons, but no, what's it going to be tomorrow or even this afternoon? Imagine what it has taken over generations, learning things, passing it along, learning, passing it along, until here we are. Truly, the luckiest people who have ever lived on Earth because of what we know. Now we have the last best chance to secure an enduring future for us. How do we do that? Well, if we haven't learned anything else, what we now know is that we're all connected. It's just one little tiny blue speck in a universe that we now know is not really friendly for the likes of us. Now, people may someday land on Mars. They may go further into the solar system and maybe even to space beyond. But can you imagine taking 8 billion of us somewhere else? That's what the population of the world now is. When I arrived a few years ago, there were only 2 billion. I've been a witness to what seems like this extraordinary success of one species, that would be us, And if you look at the numbers, it looks that way. But when you look at the balance sheet, what has it cost the Earth to get us to where we are in the 21st century? Well, that's another story. If you ask the Earth, what's the best time in all of history to be around? Earth might say, well, it certainly would have been before humans arrived, because the rest of life on Earth had a kind of harmony, a give and take, and maintained after really several billion years a planet that was blessed with oxygen that was just right for this amazing diversity of life in the ocean. A lot of give and take, animals eating animals, animals eating plants, the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, whatever it takes to make Earth habitable. It wasn't always this way. It's taken a long time to get Earth just right for us and for life as we know it. But it has taken us a really short time to go from this time of, call it planetary bliss, if you will, to a time that right now we have problems, but we have solutions because we know we've got problems. And this conference really gives me hope. Look at you. You're here. You're listening. You're soaking it up. Dreams, visions of how we can take the technology that we have, not just to destroy. We're really good at doing that, whether it's with wars or clear-cutting a forest or going out into the ocean and clear-cutting the squid and the shrimp, the krill, the fish. We are really good at extraction of life. But again, we're also good, and we're getting better at healing the harm we have caused. And as a witness, more than most of you, being an observer, as a scientist, but just as a human being armed with what all of you have, this big brain. Well, mine is not as big as some of the rest of you, but we have the power to observe, to learn, and to, based on our knowledge, change from here to there when we see that it's in our best interest. So think about 1968, that first time when astronauts were high in the sky, looking back and seeing this miracle, this living miracle dominated by the ocean, the blue planet. Think of what Earth would be without the blue. No blue, no green. We need the green too. We need it all. We need nature. But without the ocean, nature could not exist as we know it. 97% of Earth's water is ocean. And that's where most of the action is too, the greatest abundance and diversity from the surface to the greatest depths, 11 kilometers down. What really amazes me, and it would probably amaze Charles Darwin too, who came to this conference on the opening day. Some of you were witnesses to the conversation. I think Charles Darwin maybe would not be so surprised that we have been able to ascend to the skies above. I think he would be thrilled. I think he would wonder at all of the technological health, security. Our existence is possible because of all that water. Fresh water, that really matters too, but it's only 3%, including all the ice in polar areas. So I think what he would be dumbfounded about is how we have treated nature. I think anyone coming back to see us in the 21st century, having been a witness to Earth as it was, not so long ago, geologically speaking, he'd be astonished, not just at the power of our cities and our technology and how we have taken command of the world, but at the great loss. So, right now, since I was a child, not so many years ago, half the coral reefs are gone or are in a state of decline. Half of the kelp forests that here are so beautiful and so important to life in the sea. Around the world, they're gone. We've either displaced them, poisoned them, taken the elements that make a kelp forest or a coral reef and turned them into products. That polar ice could be shrinking at the rate that it is. I think that would astonish Charles Darwin. I mean, think of the changes that, given a chance to take him on a flight or put him in a spacecraft and look around, first of all, he traveled more than most of the humans in his time, or even in the time of my parents. My father was born in 1900, my mother 2 years later. In their first 20 years, they had not moved more than 20 miles. They just had this little part of the planet, and that was their world. And that's how most people lived through most of our history. We are connected. We are able, either personally, getting into various forms of transportation, even spacecraft. A few humans have been lucky enough to go high in the sky and deep into the sea. But we're connected virtually. Again, one of the great demonstrations at this conference about how we're mastering technology to be able to imagine ourselves going to places that few people ever have been or can be, will be. 1968 was a turning point in terms of awareness. We were shocked to discover just how tiny Earth is in this vast universe. You look up at the stars at night and they're beautiful, but they're really not very friendly. It's not home, and never will be. Maybe a few of us somewhere, but not all of us. 1972, just a few years later, marked the first Earth Day in Stockholm, when people who were alarmed about the changes that were now being witnessed, that they thought, we've got to do something about it. And 10 years later, I was among a few who went to London, 1982. World population by that time had reached 4 billion. From when I was a child, when I came on the planet, there were 2 billion. Okay, by then it had doubled. And what were the headline issues? Number one was nuclear holocaust. 1980s, people were building bomb shelters. They were worried, and although that has slipped a little further back in the top of our concerns, it's still there. We should still be worried. We still have not solved the problem about how do we hold ourselves in check so that that terrible disaster never happens. So that was number one in 1982. Number 2, 3, and 4 were connected. It was the growing population, already at that time realized that Earth is only so big, and it probably has a carrying capacity from, in just a few decades to go from, starting in 1800, there were 1 billion By the 1930s, 2 billion. By 1980, 4 billion. And now, here we are. We've doubled that number again. And Earth isn't any bigger. In fact, it's less able today to support us than it was going back to 1982. It was poverty, population, and the decline of the natural living systems that make Earth habitable. Fast forward another 10 years, 1992, the Earth Summit in Rio. The problem was obvious. Problems were becoming more acute, but people were more aware. It's that superpower of knowing. They were motivated to start doing something about it. National parks, protected areas on the land began to scale up. Measures to protect species, wild birds, international policies to preserve flyways,